Good afternoon and a very warm welcome indeed to this afternoon's iOB business webinar. So for those of you that are joining us again, very warm welcome and it's great to have you back. For those of you that have joined us for the first time, I'm going to do a brief run through of how these webinars work. Okay, so what we usually do is we do a brief introduction with myself. My name is Ben, pleasure to meet you if I haven't met you yet, and I'm the resident business coach here at iOB Business. Now, the way these webinars run, we do a brief introduction with myself whilst we're waiting for everybody to join us. We usually have a few people still coming around about the 2 o'clock mark. Then once we're happy with that, we've moved into the presentation and we're going to run the presentation for around about 15 to 20 minutes today. So our presentation topic is 3 things that a client expects from a digital agency. Okay, now this is very, very important for those of you that are looking to become digital agencies, and equally for those of you that are already operating successful digital agencies. Okay, it's always great information to have. And then we're going to dive into a brief Q&A. So if you do have any questions for us throughout today's presentation, related to the presentation itself, related to business, related to marketing, you're more than welcome to go ahead and ask them, and you can do so in the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen there. So it should be highlighted in gray somewhere, and you should be able to see that and ask any questions that you'd like. Okay, so one final bit just before we dive in. Everybody seems to be joining us now, which is perfect. We are going to pause very briefly between each topic today, as we always do on these webinars, to give you a chance to take some notes. So don't worry if you're falling a little bit behind with your note taking or your questions. You will have ample opportunity to catch up on that between each topic. Okay, so just give me 2 seconds and we're going to go ahead and get set up on today's presentation. Okay, perfect. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and switch off my camera as always, and then I'm going to do a brief audio and visual check with everybody on the presentation to make sure that you can still hear my voice okay, and that you can indeed see the screen okay. All right, very, very important. Okay, perfect. So just let me know if you wouldn't mind so kindly to just drop in the chat box if you can see the screen okay. So you should currently see a presentation cover saying 3 things that a client expects from a digital agency, and you should also be able to hear my voice. All righty, perfect. So it looks like we are good to go then. Okay, so today's presentation, 3 things that a client expects from their digital agency. Okay, so it's very, very important that we all pay attention to this, that we all take notes, that we all ask any questions that you need to ask. That is what I'm here for. That is what we are here for. Okay, so your presenter today, if you haven't met me before, my name is Ben, and I'm a professional business coach. Okay, so I get to do this every single day. I get to speak and work with small businesses every single day, and I truly love what I do. So it's always a pleasure to be on these webinars presenting with you. Okay, today's presentation, we're going to cover 3 topics. Number 1, we're going to discuss educated advice and care. Okay, this is really the cornerstone of what you need to be doing with your clients. And we're going to run through a couple of what if scenarios to make sure that you're prepared if your client comes at you with something that you haven't seen before. Second thing we're going to talk about is consistent results. Okay, consistent results are everything when it comes to the digital marketing space. It's something that we're looked to do, something that we're looked to achieve for, and something that I can help you with understanding. And finally, we're going to look for full delivery on your commitments. Okay, so this is something that's really, really important when it comes to working well with your clients. If you commit to something and do not follow through, they are not going to be happy. Okay, so let's get started with topic number 1 today, educated advice and care. Okay, so first things first, clients will often not only ask you to implement the physical work. Okay, so by the physical work here, what we're defining is the setting up of a paid advertising campaign, or the implementation of an SEO campaign, or building them a website. Okay, this is what could be considered as physical work. You could be building social media pages, anything that they've physically asked you to do or you've committed to doing for them. Okay, now the second part of this is that they're likely to ask you for guidance. Okay, now bearing in mind the reason that most people choose to work with digital agencies, okay, there's really 2 core reasons for this. Core reason number 1 is because they simply don't have the resources, the time, or the knowledge to implement what they need to implement. Okay, they know what they want, but they don't know how to get it. Okay, and reason number 2 is because they know that there is somebody more skilled than them out there to help them with this. Now, if you're looking to an expert, or you're looking to somebody that knows more than you about that specific space because you want to improve, because you want to grow your business, what you are going to do in this situation is you're going to look to them for guidance, advice, and help. Okay, so it's very, very important to be aware that we look to give our clients educated advice and care because we know that this is coming. If they're asking us to implement physical work, they're very likely to ask us about certain suggestions as to how to do it best. So they might come to you and say, hey, Ben, I'm looking to get some new clients, okay? But I don't actually know how I want to do that. I'm thinking about paid advertising, but do you have anything specific that you would recommend? Now, if this is the case, there's a very good chance that you could turn around and say, okay, well, actually, I've looked at your business model. I've looked at the service or product that you offer, and I feel like Facebook would be your best advertising platform. I also think that you should spend this much money, and I think that you should put in this type of content and run this kind of advert. Okay, because all of those questions are going to be left to you to be answered, because somebody is coming to you as an almost complete novice, if not complete novice, most of the time. And even if this person is skilled and experienced, you're going to be expected to keep up with that knowledge. Okay, so just be aware that as well as implementing the physical work, that's not the whole job. You are going to be asked for guidance as well. Okay, now here's a fun part. Okay, the clients are going to look to you to do all the time. Now, sometimes you're going to love this, sometimes you're not going to love this so much. Okay, but clients often have new ideas that they will look to you to implement. Okay, so if you have a particularly creative client, a particularly driven entrepreneur, somebody who really is passionate about what they do and helping who they help, okay, what you're going to find a lot of the time is that these people are very unique, they're very creative, and they look to you an awful lot to provide things for them. Okay, now what I mean by providing is allowing them to bring you an idea. So they'll say, hey, do you think this product would work? Do you think this course would work? Do you think this online ebook would work? Okay, so they'll say, well, I want to create this and I want to sell it, or I want to share it, or I want it to be downloaded, or I want to grow my mailing list, or I want to do any number of things that a client may want you to do for them. They're going to look to you to then implement this idea. So what we need to be aware of here is that when a client comes into the business and they ask us for one thing, there's a good chance that as time progresses, everybody's opinions and adaptations change. So that really seeks to us, well, how can we implement that for you? Can we sell this book faster? Can we sell more copies? Can we get it to a bigger audience? Can we build you a bigger mailing list that you can make more sales via? Okay. So it's important to understand that clients will have new ideas. And in particular, sometimes you're going to have very creative and very enthusiastic clients. Now, next thing, okay, clients will expect regular meetings from you. Now, we can't speak to every single client in the world in every single niche and every single subtopic, okay? We're working on generalized assumptions here from experience, from running businesses. Clients will generally look to expect regular meetings, okay? Now, there's lots of reasons for this, but it's mostly so that they know what's going on, okay? If the client hasn't spoken to you in a long time, they can become agitated, they can become unsure, they're not really 100% in the know of what's going on with their money, what's going on with their business, what's going on with their marketing, okay? So the more regular meetings you can provide this client with, the better. Now, you might find in a slightly unorthodox client relationship that they don't really want as many client meetings, okay? And this is fine. If that's what's happening, don't force the issue. Still seek to provide them with regular updates, but don't necessarily try and force them to sit down with you once a week for a meeting, okay? Because if they really don't want to, you forcing them into that position of having a meeting with you is not going to go overly well, okay? Everybody's busy, you're busy, you don't necessarily want to spend the time if you don't need to, and neither do they, okay? But as a whole, on the general assumption, clients will expect regular meetings from you, okay? Now, regular reporting is in almost every circumstance an expectation, okay? Now, by reporting, I mean running numbers for your clients, okay? Now, you can add as much or as little to these reports as you see fit with your client, because different clients are going to make different requirements. But it never hurts to have a boilerplate or a standard procedure that you can provide this document over to your client and say, hey, here's the top numbers for this week. So let's just say, for example, that you're running paid advertising campaigns on Facebook and you're selling a product for them. You can say, hey, this is how many we sold. This is how much it cost us per sale. This is how many new email addresses we have. This is how many upsells we managed to achieve, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so you get the picture. Now, why is this important? Well, there's many reasons as to why it's important, but I'm just going to give you a top couple, okay? Number one, your client wants to know when things are going well, and they want to know when things are going not so well, okay? So if you can keep them in the loop, you can keep them updated, they're happy and they feel involved, okay? That's number one. Number two, if you're doing well, show it off. If you're doing really, really well for your client, you're exceeding expectations, telling them about it is only going to be a positive thing. Imagine having all this wonderful success, but it's kept behind closed doors and nobody really knows how you're doing. Okay, you're doing yourself an injustice with this. So make sure that you're providing regular reports to your clients. Now, most of the time, these reports are numerical, metrics with numbers of sales and cost per sale and analysis and these kinds of things. But you can also add in your own comments. You can bulk out the reports if you want by putting in your own touches and writing a couple of paragraphs about why this is good or why this is bad. Okay, so it does generally help clients to provide some of that information, but not always completely necessary. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip back onto this slide now. You've got all the information there. I'm going to give you a brief while to go ahead and write down any notes and ask any questions that you may have, and I'll rejoin you very, very shortly for topic number 2 today. All right, perfect. So hopefully you've had a good chance now to write down anything you need to write down for topic number 1. And that then allows us to move on to topic number 2 for today. Okay, so on topic number 2, we're going to be discussing consistent results. Okay, consistency is key. If you've joined us before on these webinars, you'll have heard me say it because I say it time and time and time again. Consistency is one of the biggest things that you need to focus on an ongoing basis, especially for your clients. Okay, consistency is important across all areas of business, especially in the digital agency world, and particularly when it comes to clients. Okay, so the first part of information that I have to share with you today is that your reasonable clients will not expect the world from you. Okay, this is a given. Nobody's going to expect you to over-deliver and over-deliver and over-deliver. Okay, but what they do expect is to see certain results for their fees. Okay, clients are reasonable most of the time. Okay, now you can't again make a general assumption, but for the most part, if you treat your client with respect, they will treat you with respect. Okay, this is a service-based industry, and it's important to understand that rapport is absolutely crucial. Okay, so once again, clients do not expect the world from you, but they do expect to see results for their fees. Okay, now what a client looks at is your fees. Okay, so let's just say that you're again running paid advertising campaigns, and let's just say for round numbers that their ad spend is £100 a month and their fee to you is £100 a month. Okay, so their ad spend goes on paying for the advertising that goes to Facebook or whoever your platform is. And the second part of this retainer fee, I think, is going to go directly to you to pay for your time and your service implementation. Okay, now £100 per item is generally very, very low, and I wouldn't suggest that you work with that kind of number. But for the purpose of the presentation and round numbers, it makes sense. Okay, so let's say that the client spends £100 with you. Okay, now in the offset, they're going to agree to this because you've written a great proposal and you understand how you're going to work with each other. Over time, they'll want to see that you're using this fee well, that you're spending significant amounts of time and effort to help them achieve what they want to achieve. Okay, because when somebody works without a digital agency, the only thing they have to think about is the ad cost. When they work with a digital agency, they're thinking about the ad cost and the fee for that person's time. Okay, and effort and skill and. So with this logic in mind, people generally expect to see a higher standard of work than they would if they were to do it on their own. Why? Because they're paying you an additional fee. The reason they pay your fee is not for their own convenience. It's because they think that you're going to be able to achieve a better result than they would. Okay. Now, with experience in the industry, this can apply to SEO, this can apply to paid advertising, this can apply to almost anything. We're using paid advertising as the example here because it's the most simplistic for this specific case. Okay, so clients expect to see results for the fees that they have. Okay, and it's important that you're bringing back results that they need to see. Otherwise, they're not going to have you as a digital agency for very long. Okay, so the benevolent truth, we need to make sure that we're performing for our clients. Next, it's sensible to get reasonable expectations with new clients from the offset. Okay, so make sure that you're setting these ahead of time, because in doing so, you're going to allow yourself the opportunity to not look bad in certain circumstances and not look particularly great maybe at the start, but at least you're being completely transparent. Now, what clients respect more than somebody wowing them and somebody blowing them off their feet is somebody who's honest, somebody who is transparent. Okay, from my experience in working with new clients, from my experience in signing clients, from experience of businesses that I work with, the absolutely key fundamental here is honesty and transparency. Do not say, yep, we'll make 50,000 sales in the first month. No problem at all, no questions asked. Why? Because it's simply not true, okay? Unless you have an unbelievable advertising algorithm that nobody has ever seen before, the possibility of achieving this in month one with a reasonably small ad budget is just near impossible. Okay, so set reasonable expectations with new clients from the offset. Now, a good example of this is that new campaigns, especially in the paid advertising world, can take certain amounts of time to gain traction. Why? Because the software needs to learn. Facebook needs to learn. Google needs to learn. YouTube needs to learn. Wherever you're putting these adverts, okay, new campaigns take time to gain traction. So your client might not see a result for a couple of months. If you haven't made them aware of this, you're going to get email after email after email. Hey, Ben, when can we start to expect seeing results? Okay. Now, this isn't necessarily anybody's fault. It's just because it hasn't been communicated in the offset. If these things are communicated and dealt with in advance, then everybody knows what to expect. So what happens? Well, everybody's happier because they know what's happening, not what's going on. But secondarily, there's much less time wasting. We're not emailing back and forth saying, hey, what's happening? Can we have an update on this? Can we move forward with this? Because whoever your client is, they're already aware of what you have told them will happen with the campaign. Therefore, we're not wasting anybody's time. We're not leading anybody into an illusion. We're laying it out straight on the line and we're saying, this is how long it's going to take. Please bear with us if you see a slow period. Okay, so it always helps. And you can set expectations for meetings and time and reports and anything else you want to clarify before you start the working relationship. Okay, next, as long as you continually update your client on the progress or the setbacks, they're more likely to be reasonable and patient. Okay, so sometimes I have this question asked to me from digital agencies, from other businesses in the service-based industry. They say, oh, my client's really annoyed with me. I don't know why. I don't know what I've done. I don't know how to become reasonable again with this client. We want a nice working mutual relationship. Okay. My first question is always, well, have you communicated? Okay. Because often lack of communication will lead to frustration because we don't know what's going on. Not understanding is one of the most frustrating things that can happen to us as people. Okay. Happen to us as humans. If we don't understand something, we're either intimidated by it, we don't like it, or it causes frustration. Okay, we like to understand what's happening because once we understand, we can then begin to process and deal with it. All right. So if there has been a big setback and your client has not been updated on this, and the setback happened 3 months ago and they haven't been told, they're not going to have any time to process it, any time to deal with it, any time to come with a reasonable answer to your setback, problem, issue, whatever's going on. Okay. So you're going to find that at this point, they've already lost their patience and they're no longer reasonable because they haven't had any time to deal with it or work with you on. Okay. You remember that these people are usually professionals too. They're usually skilled business people as well. So often by informing them about a setback, they might even be able to help you with a solution. And there's nothing wrong with that from agency to client. Okay. Working together because it's in everybody's best interest. They still couldn't pull off what you could pull off in the marketing world, but they can definitely help you with some certain business issues or anything you need to overcome with their particular campaign. Okay. And finally, what clients do not like is feeling ignored, especially when they're not getting results. Okay. So what I've also seen that can be very common practice, and this is something that I can't emphasize enough to avoid. When something has not gone well, the worst thing that you can do is ignore your client. Okay. Now, often I see this with a lot of service-based businesses that they're not getting any results for their clients. So they're worried about talking to them. They don't want to get shouted at. They don't want to get fired. And they're just deciding that the best option is to just not speak to their client. They'll dodge emails, they'll dodge calls until eventually the inevitable comes and then they're forced to have the conversation with their client. However, the client that they get after 3 months of avoidance is not the same client they would have got if they picked up the phone and phoned them immediately. Okay. It's a very disgruntled, very unhappy client, and understandably so. Okay. Now, clients do not necessarily hate setbacks and they do not necessarily hate a lack of progress. What they do hate, from my general knowledge, is feeling ignored. Okay. Because when we're paying money for something, we start to feel ignored. It's becoming very, very frustrating. Okay. And you'll know this with yourself. If you purchase from a big company or you pay for a large service and you feel like you're being ignored, you feel like it's impossible to get hold of customer service or your product hasn't arrived on time or anything that it could be. Okay. It makes you feel angry, frustrated, and upset. Now, how would you respond if you were angry, frustrated, and upset, and then somebody decided to tell you about the problem? Okay. It's not going to go overly well. So you should always make an effort to communicate with your client where you can and make sure that they do not feel ignored. Okay. So moving on to topic number 3 very, very shortly. That brings us to the end of topic number 2. I'm going to give you a brief moment once again to jot down any notes and ask any questions that you might have for me on today's presentation. And I'll be right back with you. Okay, perfect. So hopefully you've had a moment now to jot down some notes and we can move smoothly on to topic number 3 now. Okay, now the third and final topic we're going to discuss today is full delivery on your commitments. I cannot emphasize this enough. Okay, now the logic to this is very, very simple. We're going to outline it in a very, very simple manner. You're more than welcome to ask any questions that you have around this. So let's just dive right into this one. Okay, if you commit to do something, it must be done. Okay, this is how business works. This is how good relationships are formed and kept. Okay, if you want to maintain long-term relationships, which by the way are key to long-term business, okay, if you want to do this, you need to make sure that you're sticking or adhering, or whatever term you'd like to use, you're making sure that you're getting things done. If you say you're going to do something, it gets done. Okay, so being on time for meetings or appointments. Okay, this is an absolute basic fundamental. Time management is key in any level of business. Okay, it doesn't matter whether you're product-based, service-based, bricks and mortar, online. Time management applies in so many different ways. We've got personal schedules, we've got working routines, we've got time blocking, we've got task completion, we've got focus. Okay, but being on time is just absolute business 101, time management 101. Okay, being on time for meetings or appointments is absolutely crucial. Why? Because it shows that you're dedicated, it shows that you're committed. Now, there's a very, very common phrase, unfortunately, I'm not sure who said it first, but it was something along the lines of, if you're not early, then you're late. Okay, so make sure that you're preparing for these meetings and appointments ahead of time, that you're managing your time effectively. Now, often what can happen with entrepreneurs, and new entrepreneurs especially, is that they're so busy, they're running from left to right, they're trying to keep up with their day because they put a stack of things in front of them that they're just really, really struggling to keep up with. Now, whilst this is fun and it's exciting, we're being pulled from left to right and we don't know what's happening, we might end up upsetting someone if we run overtime for a meeting. Now, whilst that might not necessarily be in our control within the day because we've been at another meeting that's run over time or something like that, it is ultimately on us. It is our responsibility, purely because we did not account for these extra time buffers. Okay, so it makes sense that if you're running meetings back to back, leave half an hour to an hour between each meeting so that you're leaving time for them to run over. You can prepare yourself, you can go and grab a cup of coffee, you can jot down any notes that you need to take and organize yourself ready for the next meeting. Okay, back to back meetings, i.e. 1 minute after each other, it's almost always going to go poorly because you're not allowing yourself any preparation time. Okay, so number 1, be on time. Number 2, emailing responses in a reasonable time frame. Okay, so this again is a commitment, just a basic commitment that you should have with all clients. Email responses are something that we can be waiting a long, long, long time for. If you've ever emailed a large company, you've ever emailed a very busy company, or even potentially a small company, you've sent them a message on social media, you've sent them a text or a WhatsApp or an email, it doesn't matter. Okay, if it takes them a long time to get back to you, it does not give you a great picture of that company or business, and you do not necessarily have an awful lot of confidence in working with them going forwards. Okay, so if you see an email drop into your inbox, make sure that you're getting back to it as soon as you possibly can, ideally within 24 hours. Okay, now 24 hours is a very reasonable time to respond to an email because we're all busy. Some of us don't look at our emails all the time. Okay, but at least once in that 24-hour window, you should have an allotted email checking time frame where you can go ahead and get back to these people. Okay, campaign updates or project adjustments. If you're committed to completing a successful campaign for this client, the very least that you must do is make sure that you're updating the campaign or making adjustments where need be. Okay, now one very important thing with digital work is that it's not something that can just be built and then left. Okay, websites can always be improved, paid advertising campaigns can always be improved, content and copy can always be improved, it can become more relevant to the consumer. There's all kinds of things that you can do. So just make sure that you're monitoring these on a regular basis. Your commitment to your client is that you're going to do the best that you can for them. So if you're not looking at updating, tweaking, adjusting, and improving, then are you really doing everything that you can do for them? Okay. Meeting project deadlines. Okay. Now, this one is very, very important. And I'll tell you why specifically. Okay. The primary reason that I see often in the business world that project deadlines are absolutely crucial for almost every single business owner out there is because your timeline will be collated with their timeline. Okay, now what that means is essentially if you have committed to delivering a website within 3 weeks and they have planned their website launch, they're doing a grand opening, they're doing a huge, great big product launch 3 weeks and 1 day from now, if you falter on delivering the website, they then falter on delivering their big launch day. They may have wasted a lot of money. They may have wasted a lot of time. Okay, so sadly, I do see sometimes with service-based businesses that they don't understand or appreciate how important deadlines are. Now, if you have committed to delivering something by a certain time frame, or you've committed to attend a certain appointment or meeting, you might not be aware in every circumstance how important this deadline is for that client. So if it's absolutely unavoidable and you absolutely cannot make the deadline, my best advice for you is tell the client as soon as you possibly can, okay? Because things happen, emergencies happen, mistakes happen, okay? Now, what's always sensible is if I reference back to that website example, okay? So you've committed to delivering a website within 3 weeks. Always give yourself a buffer. So if you think that the website is going to take you 3 weeks to build, then tell the client it'll be with them in 5 weeks, okay? If you think that a paid campaign is going to take a week to create, tell the client it'll be ready within 2 weeks, okay? Always allow yourself extra time. In doing so, you're allowing for unexpected pitfalls, unexpected software failures, unexpected funding problems, any number of things that could happen throughout this project. You're allowing yourself the time to fix and repair that mistake. So if you can tell the client as early as possible if you think you're not going to meet the deadline, but the second thing that you can do is allow them to plan their timeline around an inflated timeline of yours. So if you think you could have a website ready within 3 weeks, but you say to the client, okay, I think I'll have it ready within 5, they'll then plan their timeline around about the 5-week mark, and it's a win-win for both of you, okay? So providing reports with relevant data, this is just a must. As we've discussed, if the client doesn't know what's going on, they may have a lack of belief or trust in your ability. They may begin to lose confidence. They may believe that the lack of communication is something negative, and we don't want anything like that, okay? So just make sure that you're providing reports to your clients with relevant data, all right? So I'm gonna flip back on that now and just give you one final moment to jot down any notes that you might have on slide number 3. And then we can dive into our summary. We're also going to dive into the Q&A. Okay, so I've seen a couple of questions come in for me throughout the day. So I'm just going to go ahead and get them up on screen whilst you are taking down your notes. Okay, perfect. So I have my questions for me here. And to recap on today's presentation, okay, number 1, be aware that your advice will be asked for. Okay, so remember, clients are going to have lots of new ideas that they're going to ask you to implement. Secondarily, they're coming to you because they need advice. Okay, they need you to implement the physical service that they're asking for, but they also need to know how it's best to implement, what type of products they should be selling, how often they should be selling them, all kinds of cool questions that they might have for you that you should be more than confident in asking, but maybe not so clear for them. Okay, now, secondarily, consistency is key. Okay, so that applies to your advice. It must be consistent across channels. You don't want to be giving different advice when one is right and one is wrong. So make sure that your consistency is there and delivering advice and guidance. Make sure that you're getting consistent results. Make sure that you're consistently attending meetings. Make sure that you're consistently sending out reports, etc., etc., etc. Okay, so we spoke about in topic number 2. We talked about how important consistency can be. Okay, so remember this, go back to your notes, jot down anything you need to jot down from today's presentation to make sure that you remember this golden rule. Okay, and finally, as an absolute minimum, stick to your commitments with the client. Okay, now this doesn't mean that you have to go above and beyond every single day, but at the very, very least, make sure that you're turning up to meetings on time, you're delivering project deadlines, you're doing everything that you can to commit to doing what you said you were going to do. Okay, now that brings us to the Q&A session, and we would like to give you a huge thank you for attending and spending your time with us today. Okay, if you would like to talk to a member of our team, you can head over to iob-business.com/talk-to-us, and you can book a call with us at a time that suits you. Okay, so the questions that I have from today, okay, I've got an excellent couple of questions in here. All right, so question number 1. What if my client is not good with attending meetings on time? Okay, do I wait? All right, cool. So this is a great question. I can tell that you're an experienced agency owner because you've probably seen this quite a lot. So generally, yes, clients will look to book meetings and they will usually do their best to make them on time. Okay, but kind of golden rule for this one, if you think it's going to be unlikely that a client is going to attend a meeting, okay, you don't really want to confront them about this or be, confrontational, essentially. You can be polite, you can go about it in a certain way. So my golden rule of thumb, we'll book a meeting with a client, and if they don't turn up, we'll wait for approximately 10 to 15 minutes, okay? You don't want to sit there all day because you've got important things to be getting on with. Now, if this happens, you can wait for 10 to 15 minutes in case the client's running slightly behind, or maybe they got stuck in traffic or anything that could have happened. Okay, so it's always good to give that little barrier. Now, if you deal with this situation correctly, it can be mutually agreeable that you can just move the date to another time. Okay, you can move the meeting to another date and time, sorry. So you can say, okay, well, look, I'm sorry to see that you couldn't make today's meeting. Okay, so you want it to be known that you were there and ready to deliver the meeting, but you don't want to be aggressive or confrontational and put the blame on them. So what you say is, hi there, sorry to see that you couldn't attend today's meeting. Okay, so what happens in that scenario is that you're saying, well, I'm sorry that I didn't get to see you today. Okay, but you're not apologizing for missing the meeting because you didn't miss it. It's a very polite way of saying, it was actually you who couldn't make the meeting. I was here and ready to work with you. Would you like to rebook for another time? Okay, keep it very short, keep it very simple, and send the same message as if you were to say, why didn't you turn up? But it's a much, much more polite way to say this, okay? And often they'll come back and they'll say, I'm really, really sorry. It doesn't happen often. This is something that we need to improve, okay? Now, if this becomes a regular occurrence, and this is an elongated answer, it's quite a big question. If this is a consistent pattern where clients are not turning up on time, you could then begin to suggest a different time slot, okay? If they're consistently, say you have a meeting at 8 a.m. and they're consistently missing that slot every single time, you could then begin to piece two and two together and say, okay, well, mornings clearly aren't good for this client. So you could say, well, would it be more preferable for you to meet in the afternoon or the evening? Okay, and the chances are they'll turn around and say, yes, I didn't want to say anything, but mornings are actually really tricky for me. I just didn't want to let you down. Okay, so you'd rather have a meeting where they could attend on time than be sitting there for 10, 15 minutes and have the meeting rescheduled anyway. Okay, great question. Thank you. Okay, so next question. What if my campaigns don't go well for a client? Okay, cool. Another great question. So as we've spoken about before, transparency is key. Okay, we spoke about this in this presentation. We've spoken about it before multiple times. The more honest you can be, the better. Okay, if something's not going well, be honest, be open. Don't try and hide it. Don't try and run away. Don't dodge phone calls. Don't dodge emails. Okay. Now, the direction of the campaign could be incorrect. The product could be incorrect for the type of advertising. It might not necessarily be your fault. If the client has asked for something to be done in a certain way and they're non-negotiable on this, which can happen from time to time, okay? Maybe they've asked for a product to be sold via a certain advert that isn't necessarily best suited to that product. So this could actually welcome an opportunity for you both to say, hey, I actually had this idea in the offset, but I wanted to try your idea first. But what I think we should do to sell this product is X different theory, X different practice, okay? To give you a chance to pivot and start doing better, okay? Now, this is always important that we make sure that our advice and guidance is clear and understood at the beginning. Now, a client will come to us with an idea. It's then up to us as the leader of the digital agency, as the digital marketing expert in this space, to say, actually, I don't think that's a great idea. I think we should do this instead, okay? Now, this isn't always the case. Sometimes clients do have great ideas and they'll work straight off the bat. But don't be afraid to put forward your opinion if the idea is incorrect, okay? Because if their proposal isn't going to work and you know that it isn't going to work, all that's going to happen, whether it's a month, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, whatever, they're going to turn around, they're going to say, hey, why did we go ahead and do that if you knew it wasn't going to work? It clearly isn't working. Let's just stop working together, okay? Bite the bullet in the first meeting, let them know if that there is a better plan of action and go with that route. Okay, so hopefully that answers your question. Wonderful, wonderful question again. Thank you so much for that. And I'm just going to have a quick check that is the rest of our questions for today, and it looks like it is. Okay, perfect. So once again, massive thank you for joining us. You can head over to our website and book a meeting with us if you would like to learn more. It's always a pleasure to speak with you on today's presentation, and I very much look forward to seeing you again a couple of weeks from now. Bye for now and take care.